Welcome back to the Detroit is Different podcast studios. And in studio is actually a brother that's been in this studio a whole lot, right? So many people that record in Detroit is Different are a part of the network, and they connect in networking and do a lot of different shows. So like in other iterations, it's like, you get in that time machine like Piper Carter, Josh Adams, and many others. Even Rocky's Reality still going and kicking strong. But this brother came and he's like, okay, I got an audio project. I want to do this and the vision. What's it going to be? I'm like, man, charge it to the game. Get over here and get creative. And during that time, it just popped in my mind. I'm like, damn, I ain't never built with him actually in studio. So I was like, yo, let's get you in studio. Sent it out. Glad to have him here. You definitely know who he is. And when you talk about Detroit is different, I mean, it's in his damn name. Bryce Detroit, how you doing, my brother?
I'm beautiful, my brother. How you feeling, man?
All is well, man. All is well. You got all types of like fruit-infused water going.
Oh, man, God body. You already know, bro. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
All day. I'm with it. So in that same spirit and feel, people definitely will connect to you when I think of artistry, when I think of events. Very similar in the arc of a lot of the things I've done and music and hip hop.
Yes, sir.
So now I'm packing this. Your roots, man. Your peoples.
Yes.
When did they get about here and what roots do they come from that led to Detroit?
Super appreciate that. So ashe to my ancestors. First, I want to name Christine Williams Saffold. Ashe. That is my great-grandmother on my mom's side. So my maternal great-grandmother, she is from Lexington, Mississippi.
Okay, where is that at?
That is in Mississippi. Yes, sir. That's what we do know.
Okay.
We look forward to actually taking doing one of those Mecca type trips to Lexington. But so my great grandmother, she is Choctaw. Yep. So my mom would tell me stories throughout my childhood, but they didn't really connect about her fishing and how her grandmother, they would always be out in nature, and how her grandmother's hair was so long she had to wrap it around her arm like 100 times just to braid it and all this kind of stuff. And it was just like, all right, stories. But so that's the maternal great grandmother, Christine Williams Saffold. My mom's father, Alonzo Anderson, he is, shout out his mom, Dolly Mays Caldwell. Dolly Mays Caldwell, wanted to say she came up from Tennessee. She did come up from Tennessee. Yep. So she came up from Tennessee right before the turn of the 20th century type thing. So my grandfather was born in Detroit, Alonzo Clemens Anderson, ashe. My father is from Kinston, North Carolina.
Okay.
Yep. So shout out. Yeah, I mean, North Cackalack, for real.
So you just like family all over the South.
In real life, you know what I mean? Which is the origin story for many of us indigenous Detroiters. Our people came from the South, just like, this is me making a very real connection. The same way that there was a migration from Kush, which a lot of folks know as Ethiopia, to Kemet, along that Nile River, that same migration happened, or a similar one happened, tens of thousands of years later on this continent from Mississippi up to the north. That Mississippi River, a lot of people need to know this. It runs the exact same way as the Nile River. It runs from south to north. So in a very real way, we are looking at a mirror of what happened, how Kush migration to Kemet, modern day Egypt, how that created that civilization. The exact same thing happened in the late 19th century, top of the 20th century, where our ancestors migrated from the south up that mighty Mississippi River to the north to create these new societies and civilizations, which will go on to inform all of fucking Earth. You know what I mean?
I'm with it. So now we got to get into it, and we definitely know that's a brother. Your grandfather's name, you talk about like black on a resume.
Yes, sir. Come on now.
Alonzo Anderson.
That part. Unmistakable, my G. Yes, sir.
Exactly. It's like, oh yeah, we know.
Real.
It's like that's some DEI if you want it.
Hey, hey.
All right. So with that, what side of town, what parts of town did your people stay on getting here?
Boom. So my grandfather was born. That's a great question. East side. Everybody was on the east side.
Everybody's east.
Everybody's east in real life because that's where, when we're talking about between 1900 and 1930, well, yeah, the majority of us are east.
Okay.
Simply because structural racism, the way that informed the built environment, we can only live in Black Bottom, and what would later be known as Black Bottom. There were literally housing policies and covenants that restricted white people, or those who identified as white, from selling homes to us, to our ancestors. So yeah, all of our peoples in a very real way started off on the east side.
All right. Did you any get those stories coming up from them? And then also from there, where did your fam end up moving? If they stayed east, and then where at east, what communities outside of Black Bottom?
So my mom grew up on Mitchell and Mack. Yep.
Still east.
Still east. You know what I mean? Her first time west was when she had just got out of Hutzel Hospital. She was a teaching supervisor. So she taught the registered nurses she taught the nurses who were going for the registered nurse license or whatever, certificate. So she had just stopped doing that. No, while she was doing that, boom, because this was like this is the 70s. Her and my father, they moved to Rosemont. It was like the 17 or the 1800 block of Rosemont. So they moved west.
Yeah, I was going to say that's like the whole other side.
For real. You know what I mean? That's like going from Grosse Pointe to Redford.
Yeah.
Almost.
Yeah.
So then they went to Rosemont. My father, he had a dope, you know what I mean, journey to get to Detroit. It was from North Carolina to New York, from New York to Chicago, and then from Chicago to Detroit.
Wow.
Because he had an aspiration as a young rural kid, like, yo, I want to live in every major Black city on the East Coast.
Okay, because I was going to say Oakland and West, but he was like, no, I'm staying east.
East, you know what I'm
saying? So a little bit of Harlem, I'm guessing, in there.
Absolutely, because his brother, my Uncle Walter Small, my Uncle Walter moved to Harlem. Young, like maybe like 19, 20. So my pops was able to go to Harlem and then realize like, oh, I actually want to live here.
Wow.
Yep.
Okay. All right. So in those travels, and rest in peace to your father. I remember the service and everything in that passing. What was his travels like, wanting to touch base in a lot of these cities of Black communities? Because he's like, okay, you spoke on definitely growing up that rural community, but now wanting to touch base in these cities with Black people. What was the passion? What was he looking for that he either shared with you or you think?
So one thing that he shared with me was it was sort of surface, but we felt the spirit of it. Like, yo, I really needed to experience urban areas, like for real. One thing about my pops is even my grandmother, so shout out his mom, Mildred Willoughby Small, Ashe, she was remarkably cosmopolitan, even though she, you know what I mean, Kinston, North Carolina, very small city in Kinston. The way that my father was grown or raised, shout out Cora Small, his grandmother, also, because she played a major part in my father's life. But the way that he was grown and socialized, then he was already compelled to be a city boy, for real. Grounded, though, in all of the very real, natural, organic literacies that you only get from growing up from the South. You know what I mean? Like, there's a certain type of grounding and rootedness that you only get from being in that kind of proximity to nature without the fucking crazy built you know what I mean, industrial built environment around you to distract you for real. Yeah.
So that grounding, but that idea of touching base with more of the people. So now I just got to go through in that journey. What was your dad doing from city to city as he was traveling?
Yeah, my dad is dope. My baba's dope. He went to New York, and he had an interest in the medical industry pretty much all his adult life. So he started working. There's a popular hospital that begins with an M in New York, a hospital chain. Basically, they're Henry Ford, but he worked there on some old, like, whatever the manual, mundane shit. And then that really sparked for him, like, yo, I actually want to be a professional in the medical industry. So he went to Chicago at some point, was down there. He got into another hospital situation. What he was doing, though, on some G shit, on some for real hustler shit, it's like, yo, I'm putting myself in these positions and I'm learning everything around me. So regardless to whether I got my degree or not, I'll be able to advance. And essentially, he positioned himself to be like one of the most loved people everywhere he was at. So folks would always want to look out for him. So boom, he decided to move to Detroit. He had this resume that was building up.
Rich. And also this goes into, as we say, that Southern charm too. If you learn it, being a gentleman, knowing how to have that conversation with people, and that ear.
That ear, for real, like for real. That people literacy. My father was he's a PhD in that shit. So he got to Detroit, and that's when it was clear for him, like, okay, really, in order for me to excel in this industry, I'm gonna have to get my education. So he decided to go to Highland Park Community College.
Ah, man.
Yes, sir.
Oh, man. We've heard those stories about Highland Park Community College so many times. That institution, actually, even right now, though it's empty, one of the most interesting structures you will ever see. The way it's built. It's something, and what it provided for a lot of people in Highland Park and over and beyond, but just other gateways of people going through that.
Yes, exactly. So like he went from HP Community College, he got some degree in medicine, in some type of medicine, but then he went from that, he was able to spin that to go to U of M. And at U of M, he got his degree in respiratory therapy.
Wow. Okay. And I'm guessing this is clearly how he and your mom end up aligning.
He would end up meeting my mom because, they both met at Hutzel. My mom was, and they were both on some old, even though Bryce don't fuck with Black excellence as a idea, they was both on their Black excellence shit. You know what I'm saying? So my mom, she was the youngest teaching nurse to not have a teaching degree. Yeah, like one thing that Harper mandated, or it was Harper Hutzel. They had like the slash or whatever. But anyway, they mandated that in order for you to be a teaching physician or a teaching nurse, then you must have an education degree. My mom was so fucking dope. She's so fucking dope that with her young ass, you know what I'm saying, she had her registered nursing, her RN, yet she was just so fucking stellar that they made her the teacher minus a fucking master's in education.
Wow.
Yep.
So that's deep. And it also goes into like a lot of the traditions of at the time looking to get, as Detroit's becoming more Black, I'm guessing, you know, you need more Black infusion and understanding that cultural.
But it really, let me jump in though. It really was not that. The way that, because now we're talking about the 70s, like the top of the 70s, essentially. Coleman Young just got there.
Wow.
In 74. So that whole Black administration just would get there in the top of the 70s. The racism was still fucking
strong.
Oh my goodness. So my mom was an anomaly.
Wow.
On some real shit. And then my baba was an anomaly because he was the only Black man in charge of a whole division. He was the supervisor of respiratory therapy.
Wow.
Yeah. So they both ended up being like these, and that's why they stood out to each other, because my father was the only Black man in a professional position in any supervisory role at the entire hospital. Everybody else, Black male, was in janitor, was in the custodial services.
Yeah.
Custodial engineering.
And then this also goes back to that people understanding, because your dad was in that position at one point in time and having that same
Right.
understanding of navigating these spaces.
Yep.
Let me ask you this too, and I'm fascinated with your father even more so now. What was it about Detroit that kept him anchored here, being that he traveled to those other cities?
The blackness. Like, even though, because that was the thing too. Growing up in Kinston, it was small enough for everyone, Black, diasporic African, to know each other, yet it was still a majority white city. So him going to Harlem, him going to Chicago, and then eventually Detroit, that was him also on some cultural shit. Like, I need to be around more of my people. I want to experience this because I know there are places in America that are like that on this eastern seaboard. You know what I mean? So when he landed in Detroit, then that's when it just like, oh, this is what I've been looking for.
Wow.
Yep.
So it just fit. So now in this kinship, in hospitals, completely where structures were, and this is also a time when right now hospitals are the biggest business in America.
Come on now.
But it was different then. It was different then, and even the way that things would be cared for. And I'm sure if I talked to your mom, she would be able to break down point by point.
Oh my goodness. Yes, sir.
A lot of that.
Yep.
So in them meeting and making this connection and then working in health, family starts.
Yes.
Which brings Bryce Detroit here.
Yes, sir.
So much more. What was like just that scope of growing up in that household with two people in that medical industry at that time?
One is, so my mom, because of her angle in health, then she was the one who got us on, let me say it like this. We had the healthiest lunches out of all of my friends from elementary school to high school. And Bryce hated that shit.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, we would be the family where when my friends would come over, there ain't no sugar cereals. You know what I mean? Like, if we got popsicles, we got the Zoomers. We don't got no fucking name brand. We got the Detroit. There was a company called Wesley's Ice Cream Company. And they used to be right there off where the Stroh's company, like
where that factory used to be,
off
Jefferson and near
like,
Easter Market.
Yeah, exactly. And Tatum and all that shit over up in there. So yeah, we would get the Zoomers. You know what I mean? Once we got to like middle school and stuff, just because of so much protesting, it's like, Ma, can we please have some type of something that looks like some regular shit? You know what I'm saying? Can we get some Lay's or some Twinkies or something? My mom was like, okay. So then she goes to the Hostess right up here.
Oh, around the corner.
Right around the corner.
Yeah.
She go up to Hostess, and then she gets our ass the Hostess Light, the light Twinkies, bro. The 50% less fat junk. Like, we couldn't win on no level. But anyway, my mom's, because of her dopeness, we were reading ingredients since like 10 years old. Like, literally, she's the one who first taught me, like, you must read the ingredients. She was the one, when we ordered Chinese food, she would be like, and no MSG. So we had this ingredient consciousness very young. My father, as a respiratory therapist, one dope thing about respiratory therapy is it's essentially the Western version of Qigong.
So break down what Qigong is first.
Boom. So Qigong is from a traditional Chinese medicine school of thought. Qigong is breathing science. Yep. It is the science and art of really cultivating, harnessing, generating energy. In this science, though, one thing, people don't teach this, but one thing that Bryce definitely got to, because my baba was a respiratory therapist, it hit me around 27 years old. Like, yo, respiratory, re-spirit, this breath, there is no such thing as breath. The only thing in our body is spirit. And the respiratory system is the re-spiriting system. This is the system for how we travel and course spirit through our body. That's what the fuck is going on. My pops was teaching me Qigong shit when we was 5 years old because Bryce came out the womb with asthma. So my first time being taught breathing exercises, that were bottom line. He's like, I'm teaching these breathing exercises so you can control your own body, so that you can control your own asthma attacks. I was 5 years old.
Wow. That's deep, and it's interesting you bring that up as I've been looking at more of the content. I'll shout out the content creator, but I've liked some of the content from Dr. Tracy Marks
Okay.
and the relationship between breathing, meditation, and then focus
Yes.
and all of the alignment. So I've been applying it somewhat and just what that means. And I do believe that it does sync, and that goes into what we would definitely label, I guess, as more Eastern philosophies of medicine, but it's definitely a natural pathway, and it's something that could be controlled. But you learning this at 5.
Yeah.
And I'm guessing with that and having asthma and now having a father that knew how to say, okay, this is how we're going to approach this.
By teaching you how to breathe. He was the first person, even before me playing saxophone at 7 years old, he was the first person to tell me the word diaphragm and to actually teach me where breath actually comes from. One thing about folks who have asthma, you can tell if they're having some type of flare-up because the breathing gets shallow. What most people don't know is shallow breathing is chest breathing. Most of us have been conditioned by white culture because on TV, all the actors, they breathe here to emote and express. This is shallow breathing. The true breath starts in the diaphragm. So when asthmatic flare-ups happen, one key indicator is people's shoulders raise because the breathing is all right here. So the first thing he would say, first he would be like, your shoulders are raised, so I know you're going through something. You're going through something because your shoulders are up. Put your shoulders down. I'm like, breathe through your diaphragm. He would say, pursed lips, pursed. So him teaching me that at 5 years old, that hit me to, oh, okay, the breath really starts in this thing called the diaphragm. And it would allow me to later, but it would allow me to later, once Bryce really got into Chinese traditional medicine via my first Qigong books, it'll help me appreciate, like, oh, okay, not only is the chest breathing associated with asthmatic flare-ups, but chest breathing is also associated with emotional flare-ups. When niggas get mad, what happened? This shit, the breath comes here. When people are excited, here. When people are scared, here. All this is shaking. In traditional Chinese medicine, they draw a clear line. One of the reasons why so many of us are not grounded in our own fucking reality is because our breathing has gone from the diaphragm as a baby to all the way up here. And this chest breathing is literally increasing our heart rate. It's keeping us in a state of anxiety and stress because that is not the natural place where breathing starts. When breathing is up here, the body assumes we're in some fight and flight shit. Because when we're doing anything athletic, yes, the diaphragm is still going on, yet we start to get the lungs involved. All of us know that. Like anybody who's ever played a game of basketball as a child or adult, by the end of the game, we even if we are feeling good, we recognize that the breathing is up here. Yeah, that is a particular mode. The breathing only goes up here in a particular mode. When the breathing stays concentrated up here, which is why a lot of people got asthma and a lot of adults have bronchitis, is because breathing stays up here. When breathing stays up here, then we stay in a heightened emotional fight or flight response. And that leads to a lot, that explains a lot of the self-induced stress that adults go through. It's simply because our breath ain't even starting in the right place.
So you just, like I said, I already knew going into this, I'm about to learn something in Bryce's world. Definitely, as always, dropping gems. And when you talk about diaphragm, I remember being introduced to this more so through vocalists, because most people will say like any great vocalist will be singing from their diaphragm.
Yes, sir.
So their voice can travel further.
Yep.
And the notes and the pitches, you connect with it. Whereas, the other person mimicking a vocalist is probably definitely not singing from their diaphragm,
correct,
their chest.
Yep.
Also, just in that thought process, in that same zone, the tenor of the voice. So now, since we hear, how does that change from the diaphragm versus the chest so much?
So the tenor is really informed by the vocal cords. Our vocal cords, our genetics inform them to a certain extent, how they shaped. Also, though, because vocal cords are a muscle, we can stretch them joints. So you can literally have a voice that's like, hi, blah, 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 blah. And through intention, you can end up in adulthood at, hello, I'm so-and-so and so-and-so and blah, 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 blah. So that's one thing about the vocal cords and the tenor. Now, the way that the diaphragm impacts the what comes out is this. One, Bryce got to say some spiritual shit because everything starts spiritual for Bryce. One of the most important things about speaking from your diaphragm, which is different than this social meme of say it with your chest. Saying it with your chest is saying it emotionally, saying it with stress. Saying it from your diaphragm, though, when we speak from the diaphragm, when the breath starts from the diaphragm, the energy gets to pass the heart. So it literally gets informed by the heart energy. When we start from up here, that's when we can be on some foul shit because the energy never touches the heart. It's coming from here, which is already, if we start in here, we're already stressed, whether we know it or not. So it starts off stressed, never touches, never gets informed by the heart, and comes straight out.
Wow. That's deep. That's deep. And then I guess that also kind of goes, even though it's another way I look at it, but like why those songs have so much soul.
That part.
Like a Anthony Hamilton or Aretha Franklin, because Donny Hathaway, it's like,
come on,
it's passing that heart through.
Literally, their heart is literally in it. Yep.
All right, so with that, now you're taking on a lot as a child with some parents that are presenting information different than many of your homies. So I'm guessing you're staying west because that's where you guys are at when you're growing up.
University District.
Oh, University District. Yep. Okay.
Shout out Wildermere between Curtis and Thatcher. What up, though?
Yeah. All right. What do you remember about that neighborhood growing up as a kid?
So one thing, it was an all-black neighborhood in real life. Like by all black, because it's easy for us indigenous Detroiters, like it was all black. But by all black, we mean at least 87% us in the University District. My block, Wildermere between Curtis and Thatcher, it was full of young people. It was full of families. Bryce grew up only knowing two-parent households. Even my niggas one of my best friends, dearest friends to this day, Lewis Wright Ford Jr. What up, though, my nigga? Puritan and North Lawn, and then he went to be on Puritan and Turner and Puritan and Tuller. Long story short, Bryce been on PA between fucking Libby and Wyoming for a long time. Still two-parent households.
What I call the long streets.
You know what I mean?
I don't know what was going on in city planning and designing, but it's like 2 blocks.
Literally, bro. You go from like Puritan to fucking Pilgrim or some shit. It's just like bop, and then you go from Pilgrim to the Service Drive, fam. Like, yo.
And it's like different captions and also some of the most intense horseshoe games ever.
ever, man. And just some of the most down to earth, some of the most rooted people. Some of the most rooted people. But yeah, so two-parent households were a big thing, a big emotional impression for me growing up, regardless to class.
Wow.
Yeah.
So in that community and in that neighborhood, just coming up, a lot of homies, a lot of kids. I definitely think that plays a lot of my roles of socialization because even as a child, I'm interacting with so many people
Yes.
that I had to understand a lot of different personalities.
That part.
So in that school, where are you at in school?
So elementary school, Hampton Elementary. We'll take it back to kindergarten or preschool. Preschool was on some West Side tip. This is West Side. This is not Tireman, but Oakman. Oakman. Oakman and Myers. There was a preschool. There's a church called St. Lutheran. My auntie Nino, Juanita Booth, Ashe, she was a high level ass teacher. She ended up she was her last job was special education over at Chadsey. So my mom would ask her, like, Juanita, where should the kids go? Blah, blah, blah. So we started off at St. Lutheran. Then we went to Berea, which is off Tireman, in like Green Lawn or something. That was kindergarten. First grade was, I'm going to say this shit because it's funny to me, was weak ass Jesu.
Hilarious.
You know what I'm saying? Like,
that was like right around the corner, though.
Right around the corner. It was. And we never wanted to go. You know what I'm saying?
Hilarious.
But we only went for first grade, and it was really clear to me, like, Mommy, no more of this after this 1 year.
Yeah.
So first grade at Jesu, and then second through fifth grade was Hampton Elementary School.
Yeah, that's right in the mix. I went to Halle, so Hampton was a lot of those kids came through.
Absolutely. And then from Hampton to Halle.
Oh, okay. You went to Halle too.
Yes, sir.
Halle Raiders.
That part. Come on.
Halle
now.
Raiders.
Hey.
There we go.
Gang.
Interesting.
For real. Shout out James Bateman. Ashe.
Yeah, Mr. Bateman.
For real.
Mr. Bateman would be talking slow for all my Halle Raiders.
You already know, man. Come on now.
Mr. Bateman would be in there like, oh, children.
With the warmest spirit, yo, like just so, oh man. And I'm just gonna shout out Mr. Bateman real quick on this note, just uplifting it. The way that his spirit was so warm and gentle, yet he ran an exemplary elementary school. So he had to be on some leadership for real, like for real. But to the young people, like for me, Bryce never felt like this conventional, stern patriarch like a lot of us grew up. If you ever crossed a Baptist black church, if you ever went to a black, you know what I mean, then we know that the pastors had a tendency, even with the smiles and the warmth, there was this overarching hardcore patriarch thing. And it was, Mr. Bateman was not that at all.
No, very, very much. I got into all types of malarkey and shenanigans at Halle. So anybody that's watching, so this is, I'm going to echo that because in getting in trouble, which I was often in trouble, at Halle, you would rather go see Mr. Bateman. So I know this sounds crazy to say like, okay, you get kicked out of class and you want to see the principal versus my counselor was cool. Miss Dean was cool. But versus the assistant principal, like, let's put it like this. You were trying to do anything on earth to hope you didn't go see the assistant principals. But
for real.
Mr. Bateman, he'd be like, oh, what you doing now? Like, I don't know, man. I don't
exactly.
know, like, I had to talk about him. You know what I'm saying? I don't know.
For real,
you know?
for real.
So that was definitely, I remember him being very cool, always wanting to connect.
Yep.
But yeah, Halle was a whole lot of like just people, the stuff I remember from there, you know, it stands out. Who were some of your favorite teachers there?
Super shout out Miss Suzanne Wasson. Suzanne Wasson, she was my 7th grade and 8th grade science teacher. Suzanne Wasson right now is a director at DAPSEP.
Wow.
Yep. So super shout out to Suzanne Wasson. She was one of my favorites for sure. There was a teacher, my academic games teachers. So Bryce played academic games 6th through 8th grade. A beast. Oh my goodness. Oh brother. Oh
I can
brother.
imagine.
Come on, man. So my academic games teachers in 6th grade, it was Deborah Sanders. Shout out Miss Sanders. And then 7th and 8th grade, it was a white woman named Karen Napo.
I remember Miss Napo.
And Miss Napo was literally one of my favorite teachers.
Yeah, Miss Napo was mad cool with people. I was one of the people giving Miss Napo headaches from time to time.
And my headaches from Miss Napo was just because Bryce was brilliant and we loved to socialize. So it's like she loved me because of my brilliance. And then it's like, but Bryce, if you can just stop distracting everyone else, please. You and Lewis, God damn it. But yeah, so Deborah Sanders, Karen Napo, really my math teachers, because we had Miss Goof.
I remember Miss Goof.
Yeah, and we really rocked with Miss Goof.
Yeah, Miss Goof was cool.
For real, for real.
I give her headaches too, though, but that was just common.
That's just what it is, you know? That's what it is.
Commonplace.
For real, for real. For real.
The one teacher I didn't give headaches was the one everybody else hated, Miss Wright, but...
It didn't have Miss Wright. But one person that we really respected, Mr. Johnson. So Mr. Johnson was my 7th grade civics teacher. Bryce always hated, bro. We hated fucking history because it was straight European shit. And even though Bryce didn't have no framework like, European, this is whack, it was definitely like, this is the last thing we want to fucking learn about. My whole body would reject it. So we hated civics and we hated history, but we respected the fuck out of Mr. Johnson. And Mr. Johnson was hardcore though. He was hard, like he was like a for real, either Mr. Johnson walked by a penitentiary.
Hilarious.
Or he was in the military or something, bro, because he was so fucking hardcore, my G. And it was, I'm talking about, he would say his first day, and then he repeated this as his intro for every class. I'm not your friend. I'm not here to be your friend. I'm like, we get it, Mr. Johnson. You're not our friend. You don't like us, my nigga. We get it. But he loved us. His sternness, that was one of the first times outside of my Baba where we recognize like, yo, your sternness makes me want to be in integrity to you. Your sternness and how fucking hardcore you are, we want you to like me, Mr. Johnson. We want you to actually fucks with me because you, like, that validation will mean something to me as a young boy.
Yeah, and definitely like the right approach, because Mr. Bateman had his approach, Mr. Johnson had his approach. You got to know what fits you.
That part.
So I know the answer to this, but after Halle, where?
Gas Tech, come on, man. The only school in Detroit. Let technicians tell it.
Yes, you're right about that. What was your CT journey like?
So my CT journey was, it was rich. It was rich. My curriculum was architecture. So between 6 and 8 years old, Bryce was definitely expressing his affinity for Legos. And they had these other construction building block sets called Constructs. My mom would get me the Constructs versus the Legos because she like the Legos have too many small pieces and these Constructs, whatever. But the Constructs though, the thing that was dope about them is that you would end up making scaffolding. You would end up making the frames of buildings first. And then you would be able to apply the sides and the windows and stuff, but you got to make the frame first. So in that, because my mom bought me that instead of Legos, then Bryce really connected with, we love to design frames and we love to make the buildings. So we told my mom, we were like, yo, because the name of the toy was called Constructs. We were like, Mom, we want to be a constructor. And she was like, no, the word is architect. You want to be an architect. So by 7.5, architect was in my mind, but music was in my heart. My first time really drawing to an instrument was 5 years old. This all informs my Cat Tech experience. But my first time drawing to an instrument was 5 years old, playing by ear piano. And then by 7, it was really clear because of Grover Washington. Grover Washington Jr., like, we love the sound of that saxophone. We want to play the saxophone. Grover Washington Jr. and Kenny G. So that got me into saxophone. Oh, one of my favorite teachers in elementary school, just got to shout out Mr. Edward Murray. He was a stellar band teacher. That was back in the day where DPS, you had traveling band teachers. So your one band teacher would teach at like 7, 8 schools. He taught at, which is why Bryce ended up being in the traveling band. So we had Hampton, Post, Pasture, Winterhalter.
Mm.
I think he taught at Bobian too.
So like all the West Side schools.
All these West Side schools.
Mm-hmm.
So boom. So fast forward to Cass. My curriculum is architecture, but because music was in my heart and Bryce was still playing saxophone, we played saxophone all the way up until 16 and a half.
Wow.
The only reason we stopped, it was going into my 11th grade. Was it 11th grade? Yes. It was going into my 11th grade year. Miss Allen, shout out Miss Allen, the band director. Miss Allen was like, all right, Bryce, we know that you want to be in jazz band. Shout out Dr. Ben Pruitt, Ashe. Ashe. We know you want to be in jazz band, Bryce. So in order to get the jazz band, I want you to go through marching band. Marching band happens in the summertime, blah, 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 blah. So Bryce was like, yes, summer of 11th grade, we're going to be in marching band. But what ended up happening, we did this dope-ass science project in 10th grade. Me and 3 homies, we ended up getting a national award from Seiko Watch Company.
Wow.
And that set all 3 of us up for these crazy-ass internships. So in 10th grade, it's the
10th
summer
to 11th.
10th to 11th. So the summer of that going into 11th grade, instead of going to marching band camp, Bryce was working at Henry Ford Health Systems.
Ain't that, it's like full circle almost.
Full circle. But instead of being squarely in some medical department, they had me in the epidemiology. Yep, epidemiology. And that was my first time learning geographic information systems.
Wow.
GIS. And this was back in the day when GIS was like almost brand new.
Yeah, computers are present, but it's nothing like like for anybody that's watching right now, like if you go back to like computers in the 90s and consider a computer today, it's
just leaps and bounds.
Yeah, it's
like,
not even, you know what I mean? It's not even close. But
and how easily folks will go on to, nigga almost said MapQuest, Google Maps or Waves or whatever. Those apps, those programs are based off geographic information systems. For the past 30 years, there have been people in this new field who have been inputting all this data to make all these new maps and blah, 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 blah. So yeah, that was the game Bryce was in. And that's what shifted my trajectory from actually going marching band, jazz band into with nothing else but money. It was just me getting money. Like the internship was crazy, bro. That summer, a brother ended up making $7,000.
Wow. And then that era, okay, first off, 7 G's in the summer is a lot for people, period.
An adult, period. Yeah.
At that age, in that era,
come on now.
Might as well have been $1 million.
Literally, bro. and Hudson saw every penny. Hudson's got every penny of that, bro.
Hilarious.
Oh man, we was the first cat to jump to bust down in Cass Tech with Clark Wallabies.
Wow.
You know what I'm saying? Back when Wallabies was $1.60. You know what I'm saying? Like crazy prices. Jordans hadn't even gotten that high yet. But yeah, man. That was what high school looked like. At least in that regard.
In that trajectory.
Yeah.
So after high school, where's your focus? And now that just opens up a whole nother gateway of thought process, I'm guessing.
It does. What it did open up for me was this. Like, all right, B, you are a unique individual. The way you show up, these kind of opportunities happen. So you're going to have to be really intentional about what path you want, because we were already able to see senior year of high school, like you're the type of guy that can do anything. Quick anecdote, because this informs how we went into Hampton University. Hampton Elementary, Hampton University.
Yeah, I was going to say that.
That was cute to me. And it didn't even click until we got there freshman year, like, hilarious.
Yeah.
And both of the colors are white and blue. Yeah, so it's like my path is definitely one big mushroom trip, like just destined and connected. But yeah, one of the first movies that made an impression on me at 4, 5 years old was Trading Places. Yep.
I love that movie.
Me too, bro.
Let me get a Kari breakdown of it. And
yes,
then
sir.
You can fill in the rest.
Yeah.
All right. So when people say, "What's your favorite Christmas movie?" I automatically say Trading Places. So Trading Places is a film where Dan Aykroyd's character and Eddie Murphy's character trade places, where Dan Aykroyd is on Wall Street, like an aspiring partner in one of the Wall Street firms, and Eddie Murphy's just like a hustler on the street. And they cross paths, and the two brothers, the Mortimer brothers, basically, are talking about, like, okay, is the Dan Aykroyd character here because is that just more so his background, or is it just what he was placed? Does he have real talent, or is it just, he was supposed to be put here?
Yep.
And then the other argument was, nah, even if you clean up Eddie Murphy's character, he probably could get the same opportunities. And it happens. And at the end of the movie, I'm not going to give too much away.
Yeah.
It gets interesting where the game also gets played on them. But it's one of the classic 80s movies. And as far as I'm concerned, it sets the pace for Eddie Murphy's career to become the superstar that he becomes. I mean, he was already growing in that pace, I think, from Saturday Night Live. But to see him take on that type of role, and I still would say I would argue that is like my top 3 Eddie Murphy movie to this day.
For real.
It opens up a whole nother world.
I mean, in real life, we wouldn't get Coming to America without trading places.
You wouldn't get Coming to America, which you don't get Harlem Nights. You don't get Eddie Murphy becoming who Eddie Murphy is. I think without that
part. Yep.
Period.
Yep. So boom, trading places. What that impressed on me as a child was we really like money in a particular context. Money as wealth. Bryce, it really showed me, like, Bryce, you fuck with wealth. You like mahogany. You like leather-bound books. You like things that look institutional. Bro, the aesthetic of the club, like of the fucking tennis club that they were, the racquetball club, the aesthetic of the bank, all of the places that they were in, literally the architecture resonated with me. My brother didn't know, of course, the origins of Wall Street as a child, but all of that just really resonated with my whole body. So boom, we're coming out of college. We're coming out of Cass. It was senior year, second semester. Now, Bryce, because just on some real shit, we were so full of my own, like, intelligence and brilliance, we literally waited till second semester to start applying for colleges. Second semester of 12th grade, my G. And because of, you can call it a lot of self-value or arrogance, we only applied to one school. And we knew we was going to get in.
Wow.
We applied to Hampton. There was this movie that we had just saw, though, right before, as we were filling out the application. It was called Mr. Holland's Opus. So Mr. Holland's Opus, this movie essentially was about a music teacher who was teaching music in the 60s. And throughout the course of the movie, we would see his different relationships with his students. One student, Terrence Howard's character, his student was about to enter the draft. And by this time in the movie, he has these really connected relationships with all the students, blah, blah, blah. So to hear that Terrence Howard's character decided to enter the draft, even though he had a fucking scholarship application, all this real stuff, it broke Mr. Holland's heart. Me watching this character, this actor playing a teacher, being heartbroken because he knew that music would be a saving grace for this young kid. Like, you don't have to choose the draft or the army. Like, you don't have to choose that. You literally can go to college. We know that that's not something that you had thought about before, but you can. The way that character just broke down and had his whole heart broken because he couldn't save that boy with music. And then Terrence Terrence Howard's character would eventually die in a war. Bro, Bryce had never cried before at a movie, but we're sitting there 16 and a half, 17 years old. Full tears, boy. Full tears. And the reason why we were crying was because this man wanted to help people with music and he couldn't help this one kid. That's when it clicked for me like, oh, Bryce, you really want to help the world through music. You've had music in your heart this whole time. Architecture was in your head. Yes, but in your heart is music. So that's when it clicked like, we know what we want my major to be. We want it to be music engineering technology. Now, quick anecdote, my sister was already at Hampton University. And she was the first person that had ever met who was a music engineering and technology major. My sister sings opera. She didn't want to do music engineering and technology. That was the only music degree that Hampton had. She wanted to do if she could have had her way, she would have been a Juilliard. But my parents were on some real G shit, and they said, we will pay for a black school. You can pay for a white school. Yeah. So she chose a black school.
There you go.
You know what I'm saying?
And I also think it's also a little full circle because, Hampton is another one of those spaces for sure, East Coast and black, but it also stretches a little bit to the DMV area too. So now you touching base in the one place your dad didn't go in the East Coast and live, per se.
That DC, Maryland. But his father, so shout out Wilbert Franklin Small Sr., is from Berlin, Maryland.
There you go.
Yep. So it's already in there.
Okay. All right.
So boom. So Pa Dukes was like, we hear you, Bryce. You're very excited about music. It makes sense. What I'm not going to do, though, is pay for 2 music majors. Your sister's already a music major. If you love music that much, then go into the business of it. Go get a business degree. And I was like, that's the most unattractive shit ever. But we do actually fuck with Wall Street. And then all the trading places shit popped up because we were like racking my brain like, business? What the fuck? No. And we had a family business. So Bryce was unattracted to business growing up. It just didn't seem fun at all. It was just so linear. But anyway, when he was like, yeah, no, absolutely not. I'm not paying for 2 music majors, get a business degree. Then that's when it clicked for me like, oh, finance. Finance. We chose finance, 1, because of all the impressions of trade and places, but 2, this is Bryce literally at 17 and some change. We was on the couch in my den, and this is my internal conversation. We are definitely going to choose finance because we know that a main reason why people grow up to be broke or grow up to have really small lives is because, money-wise, is because our people have no idea how big the numbers are on Earth. There is so much fucking money that is generated. We knew this going into college. Like, there are, because of trading places and stuff like this, but there are people right now who, and this was back in the day, but there are folks, if they have $100 million, they think their world is over. There are people, and this was me already hip to some of the industry, like we've known for a very long time that shipping is one of the biggest industries, or at least it was one of the biggest industries in the 20th century. It was one of the oldest. And some of the oldest money on Earth was from maritime law businesses, maritime shit. There are shipping companies that make $100 billion a quarter back in the early 2000s, late 90s. It was me knowing, like, one way that we will make sure that we always think, imagine, and operate from the proper scale is to go into corporate finance, because we will always be in proximity with these big ass numbers. So we will never have small thinking, ever. And then we'll be able to bring that big thinking. We didn't know who we was going to be able to bring it to, but it was like, we know we're going to be able to benefit people with this big thinking at some point, because a lot of my niggas think small. And it's simply because they have no idea how big the numbers are on planet Earth.
Yeah. And even as you uplift that, the arc of a couple different things I want to point out from that. One, I think it's a lot of creativity in business. You have to be
Yes.
in that space because you're creating ways and propositions to interact with the general public. Now,
Mm-hmm.
what that is and how that proposition is and what your offering is, that's where we really deal with what the framing and how the presentation is. So I think
Yep.
it's a lot of creativity there. And then when you talk about the numbers being so big, yeah, the numbers can become massive. And that's back to the other thing about the numbers being big is so many audiences out here. And I think that
Yes.
that's another thing that limits a lot of people's mind. It recollects in mind too, because we sometimes are all focused on like, this is the one gateway and this is the path that has been set.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the audience. These are the people that's for it. But it's a whole nother audience if you just go this way.
Yep.
As you know, I just most recent podcast I was listening to, and they were talking about rapper here from Detroit. A lot of people may not know him, but T Grizzly and T Grizzly's success actually inside the video game world, inside of a server that he started, connected to the Grand Theft Auto series because he plays that game, and that's become a lot more of a sustaining balance than even a lot of his touring dates
Yep.
that he can control just from video gaming. Now, when Lord knows, when I was younger, and I know when Bryce was younger, and everybody's parents was like, "You ain't gonna never be able to do nothing with that," and that doesn't necessarily mean play games all day, but it's an arc, and it was a business proposition from energy
Mm-hmm.
that was connected, and now the gamification and the ways that video games have really become sport and everything is shocking
Yep.
to me. And
Big,
it's happened before our eyes within, the 20 years or so.
yeah.
It's
Real life.
not homies all coming together, all playing, Madden. It's a
Exactly.
whole different world. And that's that world of if you have enough people with interest and you arc it and you package it the right way,
Mm-hmm.
it's a connection that could be made. And now it's esports degrees. So,
Literally. So excuse me. So yep. So boom. Bryce applied to the one school, second semester, 12th grade. That was Hampton University. Of course we got in.
Yep.
So boom. My major was corporate banking and finance. Now, because Bryce really only wanted to go to school to do music, then we ended up creating my music minor through my electives. So sophomore year is when we started taking intro to recording engineering.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna shout him out because he was my sophomore roommate, Jason Jenkins from Mount Vernon.
Money earning Mount Vernon.
Right, money earning Mount Vernon. Jason let me take over his entire computer for the entire year to make beats.
Wow.
I'm talking about, bro, Jason, it had got so, I ain't gonna say bad because it was him looking out for me, but the relationship got so deep that Jason would have to ask me, can I use my computer B? I need to do some work.
Hilarious.
And bro, he like literally, so the way that Bryce has been, that's just like a little note about how throughout my life also people have seen me intergenerationally and be like, yeah, I got you. I'll help you out. But yeah, Jason let me do that. So that was me getting my composer on. The way that Bryce got to actually performance is we're in college. We had no one to produce. So as an aspiring producer, record producer in particular, then my assignment was this. All right, we're going to turn Bryce into a rapper. If we can make Bryce a world-class MC that people actually fuck with, and that Bryce as an audience, because Bryce is a consummate hip-hop audience member or part of the culture, whatever. So if we can make Bryce be a fan of Bryce, then we can produce anybody on earth. So that's what actually got me into performance. So in addition to my music engineering electives and me taking over my roommate's computer, second semester junior year would be me creating my first showcase. The showcase was called The Release. And where the idea came from was this. Hampton University is on that, it was for sure, on some really conventional, our kind of folk, Talented 10th bullshit, such to the point where they had a disrespect for entertainment as an industry. There was nothing, no curriculum, no electives to support and cultivate those of us who wanted to go into professional entertainment industry post-college. So what Bryce did was this. We're going to make a program that develops those of us who want to actually be in the entertainment industry. Like, yeah, y'all are very good about, you know what I mean, shuttling us off to the healthcare industry. You're very good about shuttling us off to the accounting and finance. Those of us who really want to be real-ass professional entertainers, though, so Bryce created The Release, which was one part artist development, one part showcase.
And I find that so interesting because I always wonder, sometimes it'll be like a whole cultural world that exists. Detroit has this often too. Detroit is different.
Yeah.
That just is not tapped into from other structures where they can get fruit off that tree. Hence, when I think Hampton, VA, just as young black, I think Timberland. I think the Neptunes.
Yes,
I think Teddy Riley.
Of course, yes.
You know, like that immediately just pops up in my head of when I think that area. So it's like, it's stuff in that backyard. Then I think Allen Iverson and Michael Vick and stuff too.
In real life,
but still, I'm thinking all of this culture that exists right there. That's music based. Especially when you think of Teddy Riley, you just have like a, you know what I'm saying? It's like, it's there if you open up the doors to something like that. And now some institutions are getting a little bit better at that, but some of those relationships, those pathways should have been connected.
Exactly. Yet we have to acknowledge, I'm gonna uplift it again. Real quick, shout out my sister, because my sister actually had an internship at Future Studios with Teddy Riley. You know?
Wow.
So that was super dope. But yeah, just gonna uplift this thing coming out of the 20th century. The way that some of our ancestors institutionalized respectability politics within themselves and institutionalized this cultural assimilation. A part of the way that the cultural assimilation and respectability come together is our ancestors desiring to culturally assimilate it to a version of the diasporic African that fit the colonizer's narrative.
So this is that same context when you speak to sometimes what people will take the term you say, what you don't like the black excellence, meaning like I can be just as excellent. So let our black orchestra play Beethoven, which Beethoven's black, which no offense to playing Beethoven, but you're doing it because it has reverence in white culture.
Right.
And the thought process is, let's show you how we can do this so much better, as opposed to saying, nah, we about to take this and we're about to play some Chucky Brown because we still in the DMV and that's what we gonna make this go-go.
Come on now.
Our orchestra instruments. And we're going to have this other audience experience something that they've never experienced. I know you all been to like a fancy soul food restaurant when people from out of town take you there and you be like, yo, this is not.
Come on now. Who is this for real?
This is not this fusion that you're calling collard greens.
Come on, man.
It's not collard greens that I'm thinking.
For real. Like, is there any melanin in that kitchen? Because these greens.
Yes.
Good gracious.
Yeah.
So yeah, man, that just uplifting that was a real thing, and it still is a real thing. The whack shit, well, there's this one thing that's whack. The way that it's whack, it's funny because it's like it's an ironic kind of whackness. The irony of this whackness is this. A thing that's whack to me now is that coming out of the 90s, folks who were, there's this book called Our Kind of Folk.
Our Kind of People.
Our Kind of People.
Very familiar with that book because actually parts of my family is actually part of that. So if you when you start, and it actually spun off into a television series with a couple episodes and everything, but it's about, and many HBCU institutions have this, like the legacy HBCU student. So first off, the first thing that's going to be out there is the colorism, or is the light-skinnedness that exists in it. And the book even starts with elders saying like, hey, you better get in the shade if it's the summertime because you don't want to get darker, because if you get darker, it's going to be associated with harder life. And we want to stay light-skinned. You know what I'm saying? So like this arc that goes throughout that these people end up in leadership positions. And the playouts of colorism still exists, especially when we think of globally, but even what exists within some of our communities here. Like it's an idea when we think to ourselves, close your eyes and you say to yourself, okay, this is the first Black president of this hospital. You close your eyes and you think of it, you already know who you're thinking about. You know who you think you've seen. You know what I'm saying? The last person you thinking you've seen is the name is, I'm gonna shout out your grand. I love that name. Alonzo Anderson.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying?
Alonzo Anderson coming to mind.
You're thinking that it's gonna be you know who you're thinking of.
That part.
And the reason we think that is because oftentimes that alignment goes hand in hand. And I want to fast forward because I got to bring you back. We get so close, but I want you to flip it too, because you're in this space of recognizing all of this from the HBCU institution. And now you're in a space with so much artistry. When I think of another world that can be so pretentious and so, it's so built on labels and before it even gets to the crux of the culture. So now I'm fast forwarding in the journey, but how do you end up connecting into the world of art? And how do you, even to this day, present people art in a way where they're coming into the Black experience instead of the Black experience trying to go into the art world?
So boom. And I appreciate that question. Because going into college, my aspiration was for a scalable career in the music industry, then that was already Bryce. Like Bryce is going into the professional creative industries, period. We're going to do so though with this for sure finance, business mind in a particular way, yet that's where we're destined. So played in that space for some years, decided to, because of a spiritual compromise that we did not see coming, but it ended up happening. It was like, yo, this space, because of my ambition, then the ambition will lead one to want to be more and more aligned with that space. But that space is, spiritually speaking, it is the antithesis of healthy, love, heart-centered spirituality. It's the antithesis of it. So, boom, abandon that path. Now we're talking about 2010. The only reason that space was attractive to me in the first place is it represented an economic apparatus. Like this infrastructure is the infrastructure to distribute and promote my music to millions of people every 24 hours. Bryce wants to impact millions of people in my lifetime through music. So that's what made that space a logical thing. Like, yes, but once you're in that space, especially if your music is rooted in a real spirituality, and we ain't talking about fucking gospel music, we talking about spirit music, which can be blues or jazz or rap or funk or soul. If your music is really rooted in a particular spirituality and your design, the point of your music is to inspire people to actualize according to their own aspirations. If that's the point of your music, then you cannot do it in that space. That space will only promote and tolerate, when we're talking about Black people, you're only going to promote and tolerate Black people who are signing up to sell the myopic, narrow range of self-identities of the assimilated black capitalist or the black criminal entrepreneur, either criminal entrepreneur through sex work, because sex work is still criminalized in America, or the criminal entrepreneur through drug dealing. That's a fucking very narrow range. So Bryce was always going to be doing in the creative industry and entertainment, because the destiny is to impact through music at scale, at a global scale. Then the assignment became, you must make your own machine. You know what the machine is, Bryce? The machine is nothing but respective facilities, actual buildings. Inside these buildings are particular cultural, economic activity. For example, looking at Detroit's landscape, one building, Hitsville, that building had a particular type of cultural, economic activity in it. It was recording, it was producing music, and then it was administrating that music. Cool. You got United Sound. United Sound, another building, a particular range of cultural, economic activity. In particular, it was a production facility. You got Archer Pressing Plant, another building with people in it doing a particular type of cultural, economic activity, pressing records. What the machine looks like is these buildings with respective cultural, economic activity in them, and people orienting from those respective points of identity. Once you network these respective things and they're working in concert, that's the infrastructure. That's the machine. That's the machine. So it's like, okay, shit. You in your DNA, Bryce, in your DNA is the blueprint for that kind of infrastructure. You found yourself as an adult into the North End. There's evidence of that infrastructure on Oakland Avenue.
Wow.
You got evidence of the infrastructure living in the form of submerged distribution, underground resistance. Super shout out Mike Banks. Super shout out to ancestor Bridget Banks. Super shout out John Collins, Cornelius, everybody over there, man. I love y'all. Y'all already know what it is. But yeah, we already have this in the DNA. It's still in our soil. So that's when the mission became, all right, make your own machine. And we started with the people first. Because even if you have 100 buildings and each one of these buildings is got all the equipment and tools and resources, if you don't have people who identify in a particular, skill set way, professional way, then these buildings are empty. You got to have the workforce. You got to have people who not only have the technical skills, but actually have the spirit, the spirituality to produce this new content.
And I'm about to go Bryce with Bryce right here.
Yes, sir.
It's what I always speak about. I'm always talking 3 C's. I'm talking culture, talking community, but creativity. And this is the Bryce of it. Creativity, hence the creator. So this is definitely a divine connection when we're getting creative. And I definitely believe that we as a melanated people, our creativity is by far so reaching, and it's hard to capture and harness it, like in a sense, because it's a spirit of an energy that starts pouring out. But when you catch that wave of that good creativity, it's something that becomes infectious and other people start tagging along.
Absolutely.
Because in that Motown comes and people may one way or the other, it's the etiquette coaching, the choreography, the people that are working in the office. So it's like to define, and I think these systems are aligned more with like a Western way of thinking, is you're this and you're that. Even in the creative spaces, it's like, okay, well, if you do this type of art, you don't do that type of art. And it's like, nah, it's not like that. Like, everybody's kind of in the mix with everybody because that's just how our community is. So, it's nothing that clearly Malcolm X is gonna know a Bumpy Johnson and gonna remember Billie Holiday, and they're all interacting with one another, and the the bounds of you being in one space or the other is just not how our community connects through creativity.
That part. Also, want to make sure that I'm responding as precisely as possible too.
Mhm.
So, boom. One part of my entertainment justice practice is making the machine. That is why people have seen me over the last 10 years, and for sure, working very fucking hard to fundraise through philanthropy just so we can start buying property.
Mm.
The buying of the property is because to make the machine, we need buildings that can be houses of this cultural economic activity. That's what the garage represents. The garage represents one part of this new burgeoning infrastructure. That is a place for the creation and the experimentation. We have one of the projects that we're working on and we're aggressively fundraising for, the Detroit Recording House, 913 King Street. That is going to be our 21st century Hitsville.
I love it. And I do have to shout out the garage. If you haven't been there, this space is very creative. You're walking into art installations. You're walking into a space that also honors Kalindi. Like, this is something that's creative within its own right. And then, you open up the side and the events, it's welcoming in community. And similar to a lot of some of the works that I'm doing, it's of and welcome right in the heart of what I see as real Detroit community.
Yes,
so
sir.
That's the other part that adds a layer of authenticity that some of the other, I guess, cultural experiences, I just don't think have that.
Boom. For me, what makes an experience a cultural one versus us experiencing art in the environment or some shit is our intention about rooting the activity, rooting the event in uplifting particular points of identity, uplifting particular points of behavior. My working definition of culture my entire adulthood has been culture equals your self-image, self-identity, plus the behaviors that naturally come from that. That's what equals culture, because it is how we see ourselves. And then based on how we see ourselves on the inside and what we define ourselves as, then we begin to imagine ourselves behaving in certain ways. However we imagine ourselves behaving, that is what we end up doing on Earth. So the culture is a product of our self-image, self-identity, plus behaviors that naturally come from there. I want to highlight this part too. Behaviors naturally come from self-identity. It's not the other way around. It's not you behave a way in order to be that thing. You must you call yourself that thing first. For instance, Kari calls himself a media producer, self-identifies as a director, podcast, media professional. Therefore, however long you've been doing that, that's how long naturally ideas, imagination about producing media and all of these things will naturally come because you call yourself that thing. You call yourself a basketball player, you're going to instinctively want to practice.
That naturally leads to a question that we should have had this conversation a minute ago, and we get into a close, but this is where we at. It's similar to what's happening with AI. And I've had this discussion with many people where it's like, is it good? Is it bad? I believe it's a tool.
Yep.
Like any other tool. So there will be people that use it for bad, and there'll be people that use it for good. I'm using a lot of it for good, I see, and it's adding to the creative flow. But the first thing that AI is really going to challenge you to do, and it's similar to what you said, is we skip so many steps in the creative process because we've been doing it for so long that if you're prompting, and that's when you basically write out whatever you would like to see written, seen, visualized, however you're doing this, you're forgetting steps that you already start with at the root. And that root step is the first thing you said. Who are you?
Yes.
And what is this? Because I can naturally, like, if Bryce came to me and said, hey, Kari, I want you to record, I don't know, record me in my live set,
Yep.
and I want you to do a video for it. Now, immediately my mind is like, okay, I need this equipment, that equipment, and I need to know the time. I need to know the date. We'll talk price or whatever
Yep.
that capacity, and I need to know where the outlets are. But I've skipped so much of the creative process of saying, like, okay, in these shots that I'm going to capture, I'm going to show up beforehand. I'm going to get enough so that I can have like an introduction into the video. I'm going to put that in because I know that that's how I already am grounded in how I'm going to watch something and all of this introduction. And then I need to have a cover for what that even looks like. Like, it's so many steps that you forget until now you're brought back even to prompt yourself into how to prompt yourself of how we even get creative in the first place.
That's real.
Hence, if I even say something as simple as draw a stick figure, right? I'm going to grab a pen and already, but I visualize the stick figure the minute that you even told it to me. But I'm skipping the step of saying to myself, what am I already envisioning before I even start writing? Because it happens same time. But so I know I got, like I said, I'm about to get Bryce with Bryce, but that's kind of where we at.
That's where we at, bro.
Which kind of goes into like, how do you see this impacting a lot of people working with it? And it's also interesting to see. It's interesting to see the people that are pushing back.
Yeah.
It's interesting to see the people that are welcoming it. I just want your take. That's all.
So, where Bryce is personally with this AI conversation, the thing that's most intriguing to me is continuing to meet engineers who are dedicated to creating our own ancestral intelligence apparatus.
Wow.
There's a brother named Human, he goes by Human, Huemann 13 on IG, either one N or two N's. But the short of it is, this is a brother who is a phenomenal engineer. He creates his own chatbots. He creates his own AI programs. The short of it is, we've been in conversation just via IG over the year. There's at least one person, at least one, who is out here dedicating all of their energy to creating our own, and teaching others how to do it. Another thing we're going to say, I'm going to take it to the MCU, the Marvel Comic Universe. Now, it really just clicked for me in the last 8 months, watching but for the last 5 years, when the winter solstice comes, we watch every Marvel movie from the beginning, like in sequence, because a lot of Kemetic Osarian mythology is in the Marvel Comic Universe, in the storytelling. The short of it, though, is me watching it this most recent winter solstice. That's when it really clicked for me. Like, Bryce, you actually fuck with Jarvis hella hard. Every one of these Iron Man movies that you've watched, you've always fucked with Jarvis. Nigga, Jarvis is AI.
Wow.
What that character was showing you is, you fuck with Tony Stark's made his own AI. Tony Stark's made Jarvis. And then now this is the relationship that he has with his AI. Bryce, that is your conversation with AI.
Wow.
You actually fucks with it. You fucks with it in that way, though, to make our own that benefits what we needed to do. So that's where Bryce is now.
And it's good to hear that. And this is, I guess, and I got to bring you back, period. This is so much. But uplift, because this will probably get up a couple weeks from now, but uplift some of the projects. How can people help with what you're creating with the garage and some of the other creative works? Let the people know how to connect and what to expect next.
Super dope. So for sure, folks can expect to see a fundraiser. We are officially raising funds and no longer doing it in quiet, only with philanthropy. One thing that's been a real part of my career is because our people need culture in a particular way, then Bryce has been approaching it from service versus approaching it from commerce. If you know Bryce, then you know for the past 11 years, every event Bryce has done has been absolutely free. Absolutely free. Well, it costs, on minimum, it costs around $175,000 every year for me to do one thing for free. Yeah. People applaud me and be like, yeah, B, you the man. Thank you. I love this. I love this. Thank you. We need this so much. Cool. How can I help? How can I help? Well, you all can help build. You can help me to build the things that you benefit from for free through being a part of the resourcing of this. So it finally hit me in the last 2 months, like, yes, Bryce, this must be people powered. It can't just be philanthropy powered, because when philanthropy be on some old philanthropy shit, which is what happened in 2024, a lot of people don't know the kind of really challenging year of growth Bryce had in 2024 because philanthropy was on some philanthropy shit. But we still got off mad programs, a lot of it coming out of my own pocket. You know what I mean? And we're comfortable saying it. A brother went through 3 years worth of savings just because my team grew and we needed to retain my team, and we still wanted to get the programs off for free. Now, the fundraising one is for programming, but the fundraising also is because Bryce is literally developing the infrastructure, business economic infrastructure in a new music industry, and it's rooted in the North End. It cost, just the Detroit Recording House, we got an estimate for $1.1 million to make that a 21st century facility that can last for 200 years. We're seeing already what happens when you develop a house that can last for 100 years. Cool. But we need to make houses that last for more than 100 years. So when we do things the proper way, then we actually have to deal with the real world cost of doing things proper. A lot of us have been spending so many years on an activist grassroots tip, rubbing nickels together, making magic. Those nickels, it costs more than the 2 nickels though, you know what I'm saying, to put a building on your block. It costs more than $25K. It costs more than $1 million. We go to the Detroit People's Food Co-op, and I'm gonna get to how niggas can help me directly, but we go to the Detroit People's Food Co-op at least 4 times a week. That was a $100 million project.
Yeah.
In order for us to have thriving neighborhoods, then we have to build them ourselves. That is the legacy that our ancestors put into us. Atlanta wasn't Atlanta until it burnt down. General Sherman took some people away, and then folks decided to stay. Ancestors in Atlanta decided to stay, and they built that shit. That's what made Atlanta what Atlanta is today. We only have a black bottom to talk about because our ancestors decided to go into business as individuals and then collectively pool earnings to create more infrastructure for the whole village. Our cities in the 21st century are only going to get built if we build them.
I'm with it.
So that's where the fundraiser is coming in. So y'all can definitely go to my new CDC, Detroit African Community Development Corporation. You'll be able to go to our website, thedacdc.org, and you can definitely support the fundraiser.
I'm with it, and I'll definitely be supporting it. As you all know, like I say, bringing Bryce in, and it's some people doing some things over here, and it's great to have even that unison. Like, we cross paths, probably not like as much as people may think, but it's good to get that energy in that field, because the same works here with Detroit is different. And like I always say, I mean, as you cast that net further, it inspires me to cast the net further. And Mark Crane over there casting the net further.
Yes,
we see Mama Shu casting the net further.
Yes, sir.
We just keep building these block by block by block.
Yes. And what we will end up having, basically, Bryce has been telling this story for the last 18 months. We are 100 years to the date of the time where our ancestors were literally making Black Bottom. and the way the Black Bottom really came about was in the same way that the new us-led infrastructure is happening in the 21st century. Folks from the late starting in the 1900s into the 1910s, it was people migrating up to Detroit in a particular way. It hadn't gotten to the big migration yet, but people were trickling up. Those people mingling, interacting with the indigenous Detroiters. The activity from 1910 to 1919, that's what would allow for a certain scaling of that activity by 1920 to 1930. Now let's boom, fast forward 100 years. Those of us who have been on the scene since 2010 doing work, then we know that from 2010 to 2019, Detroit has looked like, my collaborations in particular, have looked like indigenous Detroiters and people who just got here. One of my brother brothers, Kwaku Osei, from Virginia.
Yeah.
There are so many people who are in positions in Detroit who just got here between 2010 and 2019.
Yeah.
Yet, it is those people, the same way our ancestors were coming up, it's those people mingling and creating bonds with indigenous Detroiters. The work that we started to do in that 10 years is the foundation that we're building on now.
And I think it's wonderful, man. Like, yeah, as you say, and Kwaku, I mean, talk about Detroit. He's staying in Zone 8.
Come on now.
They don't get more Detroit than that now.
And super shout out to the mayor of Zone 8, Brother Yusuf Dr. Yusuf Shakur.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Dr. Bunchy.
Dr. Bunchy, come on.
But we never saw it coming, but now it's so fitting. Just took, and that, y'all know that's one of my closest, executive director of the Michigan Roundtable for Just Community. So like that announcement, and that's the other part that you see, like people doing the work ending up in other positions, and we're just still sharing that potluck pot as other opportunities come to life. And that's where it's so empowering to see in that path. And back to, like you say, let's not look at it so small. Let's cast that bigger net, and the numbers are big.
And walk like our ancestors, because our ancestors 100 years ago were walking in a particular way that created Black Bottom, that created Paradise Valley. We are at a time now where our work will create what the next 100 years of Black Detroit looks like or doesn't look like.
Yeah, that's deep. All right, so now classic Detroit is different questions.
Yes, sir.
Your very first car, year, make, and model, year you got it.
The first car we paid for, 2000. It was a 99 C280 Merlot Benz. And that was 2003.
Okay. All right. Where's the first place you went when you got it?
My brother Lou crib.
Okay.
all fucking Turner and Puritan was like, nigga.
The long streets.
For real.
I mean, he's really safe in the long streets.
That part. Went straight to PA like, nigga. Let's get in, bro. Get in.
All right, you're the DJ at the end of the fireworks. Woodward and Jefferson.
Yep.
You get to play 2 songs. What songs you playing?
One, because it resonates so deeply, and my music family, they did an amazing job at the Legacy of Funk with the rendition. Frankie Beverly and Mays, Before I Let You Go, Before I Let Go, we're going to do that for sure. Shit. This doesn't exist yet, but it might, because Bryce just said it. We would actually have a mix of Hello Detroit mashed up with Time for the Percolator.
All right, Say Less. And now you got
That's my idea. Anybody who take it, just know that came from Bryce right there.
Bryce is gonna make sure that's delivered.
For real.
We usually come on once a year now. I want to hear this.
12 months. Yes,
within a 12-month period.
Yes, sir.
Oh, we gonna get the brain children of Sterling and Nick Speed in the mix or something this.
Yes.
All right, and last question: if you could rename, I said that's crazy. If you could rename Woodward after one Detroiter, who would it be and why?
That's a great question. Well, the first name that comes up is Coleman, and that's big. One is Woodward as the first paved road. What that meant for the racial and the racist industrialists, that was a symbol of, on some Mercury shit, communicating, traveling. That was a symbol of this consciousness, this economic consciousness is now able to spread and travel. Coleman, Ashe, he had a whole plan for Woodward, a whole plan that included a rail line that was going to touch from, it was going to go from like Chicago, Ann Arbor. It was crazy. Like his plan was crazy for it because he recognized that that thoroughfare economically means something, but also spiritually, it means something too. And it means something for us to control the traffic, because it was the controlling of traffic in a racialized way that created the first redlining, that ensured that our ancestors were kept in a particular type of slavery economic pocket. So we would definitely rename it after Coleman Alexander Young, because in 1974, him and his administration brought new traffic to our city, and it was black traffic.
I love it. I love it. He is the number one answer for that. I love the layers you added to that. Bryce, amazing. Thank you so much.
My brother, yes, sir.
Always.
Always. Dude.
Peace.
Detroit is different. Detroit is different.